This is a very simple idea, and some of you are probably already doing it. You just might be calling it something different, but you know, I'm right now where I find myself about every 2 to 3 years looking for an associate. You know, the guy that comes alongside me handles student ministry, handles the academies, my backup, handles, you know, small groups or choir and things like that. And, you know, when I came back from this meeting with Mike, the Lord just laid something in my heart, and I don't know if it's just for this time or what, but I thought, you know, it's great for all of us in this room to get on board with the idea, because most of us have been on board with this for years. We've just never been organized with it. But I thought, what happens 15 years down the road when I'm 65 or I'm hitting 70 and I'm starting to see God's hand wrap my ministry up? And I thought, what happens when we guys in this room and the others that are out there get to that period of our ministry? Who's coming up behind us? And so God just began to convict me about that a little bit, and He said, well, what do you want to see 15 years from now when you turn around and look what, you know, I've allowed you to do? And the thought just came to me, Mike, what if I was able, what if I had been able over these next 15 years to reproduce myself, to reinvent myself? You know, Rick and I share a lot of the same heritage from under great pastors and leadership. A lot of those guys never had that experience, never had that opportunity. I wouldn't give anything for that. But you know, how many guys out there don't have that privilege, and they're out there just trying to make it happen, and they're calling us and they're going, man, I don't know how to deal with this. So God just laid on my heart, what if you mentored a guy, you know, coming right out of school? You know, you have and I think that's where we're going to have to get those fellas, you know, because what happens when a lot of these guys get out there and they get into ministry, you know what happens? They go by, well, you know, my buddy down the street, that's what he's doing, is working for him, you know, and I can't do this because that's kind of yesteryear, and, you know, that's not cool anymore. What? They don't have anybody coming alongside them saying, you know what, this is the essence of the gospel. This is what you were called to do. You know, and the guys that are trading in their choirs for the worship teams, and they're knocking out those people for the opportunity to be able to serve the Lord with the gift they gave them, I believe God's going to hold them accountable for that. But I'll tell you something else. I believe God's going to hold us accountable because we know better. And if we don't take that message and instill it into another guy that's been called into ministry, I believe we're as answerable for that as he is. So I got to thinking about that. What can I do at my level right here? If nobody else do it, what can Rodney Brooks do? Not everybody has the same resources. Not everybody could do it at the same level. But what if I had a kid that's coming right out of school who has the skill level, he has the talent, he has studied, but he is green as an apple? Am I willing to take a guy like that and invest myself into him and give him hands-on, real-life experience in ministry and mentor him? Put him in front of the choir. Let him deal with what it takes to deal with people in unusual situations, all the things that they don't get in the seminaries or in the universities. This is real life stuff out here. How do you deal with your pastor when you can't get along on a subject? How do you understand the authority of the pastor? How do you understand protocol? How do you deal with the mom and dad that's down your throat about something with their kid? How do you deal with the choir member that thinks that they're more than a choir member, that they feel like they've got to be the soloist every week? You know what I'm saying? Those things that we all deal with. And God just said, well, you know what? Here's what you could do. Partner with a university, part with a seminary, and say, who's your diamond in the rough? Who's your guy that's just got it? And under your leadership, you could develop one of the finest ministers of music in the country. You know what I'd love to do 15 years from now? Turn around and see a dozen guys I put out there in the field who has vibrant music ministries, who knows how to create, grow, and maintain a ministry from the bottom up with the graded choirs. You know, it grieves my heart to go into big churches. They don't have a children's choir program. What's that about? Student choir. What's that? Oh, student. Nah, man, we're not into that. Listen, my associate that was here a year ago, the first rehearsal he called, this church had not had a youth choir in 3.5 years, right here at First Atlanta. First rehearsal he called, he had 100 kids show up to sing in the choir. Don't tell me the youth choir's dead. I don't believe that. I saw them make an impact on this church for an entire year. I know it can be done. It can be done again. And what happens, guys, you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. But look, that's what's feeding your big choirs, your adult choirs. If we don't teach them here and if we don't get them down here, but you know what? If we don't have somebody at the helm that understands that philosophy and has not been swayed by all the fads and the trends and things like that, we're going to end up with churches that are what we're experiencing now. And they're all over the map. Some are even using secular music in their programs because they think that's the thing to pull this group of people in. You know, they don't understand come out and be ye separated. You know, they haven't been taught that at a practical level. So God just burdened on my heart. And I just shared this with Mike, and I said, you know, I'll be glad to share this. Some guys may be able to do it on a level that they could compensate a guy. If I was coming out of college and I had somebody that called me from a substantial church and said, hey, I'll pay you this amount of dollars, you can come work for me for a contract of 2 or 3 years. What really got to me is when I was looking at the fact that every 2 or 3 years I'm in the market for an associate. And I understand that. You know, I'm not criticizing that part of it. That's the nature of that position. You know, they come in, they're mentored, they're used, and a church comes along and they offer them an opportunity. That's all well and good. But I thought, if I'm going to lose a guy every 2 or 3 years, why don't I benefit from that? Why don't I take that revolving door and throw out some guys that I've been able to mentor hands-on, so that when the pastor of that church out there calls me and says, Rodney, I can't find anybody that believes in the choir. You know, I had a pastor call me this week and says, I've interviewed 3 guys, and you know what they talk about? Worship team, band, guitar, and what do I have to wear on the platform? That was a pastor. And he said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in a choir program. I'm interested in somebody that gets it, that does it like you guys are doing it. You know what? What would it be to say, take a guy in, mentor him for a period of 2 or 3 years, and say, I'll guarantee you I can place you in a church at the end of your tenure here. That's appealing to students. But I think the key to that is, and what I talked to Roger Breland about, and I've talked to some guys over at Liberty about, and I would love to partner with Dr. Whaley, send me your diamonds and let me just work with them for 2 to 3 years. Make sure they have the heart. You know, give me just your best. Make sure they have the heart and they're all about the choir and that kind of thing. I've got a young man in Virginia right now. He's been out of school 3 years. The guy is head and shoulders above me in talent and skill. He has the whole package. He is chomping at the bits to get down here and learn and just learn. That guy is going to be a minister of music in a major church one day. It's going to happen. But you know what? What an awesome opportunity it would be for me to invest in him and mold him and to shape him and to say, this is what it's about. So that's what the whole thing is about. We call it a residency. We call it a mentorship program. I shared it with Dr. Stanley. He was all over it. You know, you might be in a situation where you have a couple of guys right there in your own church, you know, that you want to mold and shape. I just challenge you to do that. Or maybe you bring a couple of guys in on a part-time basis or something like that. So that's where we are. That's what Rodney Brooks is doing here to help give back. Like Mike said, this is not about us. It's about getting it out there. And I believe we need to raise up a generation of ministers of music, of like-minded, so that when we pass off gatekeepers in a few years, that thing is going to be unbelievable. It'll be staggering what God can do. And I believe God's all over this. And so that's just another little method we might be able to help further this ministry.